what's funny?
Right?
You know, yeah, he did. But you know what's funny? It keeps coming again. And I'm not sure how this works. If he gets elected again as president, was because it was supposedly he was going to pardon, what's his name, Jimmy Henchman. But I'm not sure. I don't know the details.
Yeah, Jimmy Henchman's case is a little different, you know, about the shooting that happened with his son back in the days.
Right.
I mean, the dispute and the shooting, they killed the guy. And Jimmy Henchman was a real boss. He was a boss of bosses.
So he's a gangster.
He was. He was a boss, Jimmy Henchman. So anybody that knows who Jimmy Henchman is, you know, even Puffy and those guys feared him back in those days. Jimmy Henchman was very well known to a lot of people in the music industry. He was one of those guys that was a boss, you know?
Now, if he does get pardoned by Trump in the future, you never know.
I mean, you never know.
It should certain people be feared? Fearful of him?
I don't know if Jimmy, listen, he's been in a little while now. I don't think he would want to come out and be bothered with that. He probably want to come back to his music and be a boss again.
Well, music, I don't know. What do you mean by music? Because supposedly, according to the Fed, he was using a label as his to front, you know, to move.
Well, that's true too. He probably couldn't go back to stuff like that. But I'm sure if he was smart, he'd put stuff away, and he's got a few assets that he has in the bank or whatever,
right.
And he's able to go back on his feet. But Jimmy Henchman was a real boss back then.
Because I remember when I first met you, you told me, yeah, Jimmy Henchman was going to die in prison.
Yeah, well, back then, because stuff that was going on about him, you know, back in the days.
This was like 2015, I think.
Yeah. So but you know, right now he might get out early. It might change. You know,
because, yeah.
I could see things like that happen. But Jimmy Henchman, like I said, I remember when the marshals and detectives were chasing him, they called me up and said, "Derrick, who is this guy?" I said, "You don't know who Jimmy Henchman is?" Because you know they don't know who people are on the streets.
Right.
And Jimmy was big time at that time.
Chasing him? What do you mean? But define chasing.
Well, they had to go and pick him up. They were looking to arrest him.
Okay. Well,
he was on the move. He was on the move. So
okay.
One of my friends is in the task force, and he said, "Derrick, who is this guy? We caught him, but who is he?" They didn't know who he was.
Right.
Because Jimmy was so behind the scenes, like that.
Yeah.
And that's the way you have to be. You have to be behind the scenes. And he was at the time. But, you know, there's certain guys out here that have props in the street, you know.
Right.
And they might not be the type, you know, the smart guy is the guy who sits back and everybody knows I'm the boss, but I don't go here and publicly say it. I'll let people think you're the boss, right? But I'm really the boss behind everything.
Right.
And that's how Jimmy was at the time.
Now, you ever crossed paths with Jimmy and him?
No, not really. I knew a lot about him. I think I don't know if I ever dealt with him at one time, but I knew who he was. You know, I knew who a lot of people were back then, you know?
Right.
That was my job to know what was going on with people. And listen, you know, there's always times when people do things, you can get them, and then sometimes you can't get them. But you have to monitor and see what goes on and see how the things in the street. Because, you know, whatever disputes these guys have or any problems they have between themselves, keep it between yourselves. Don't get innocent people hurt, you know?
Right.
They have nothing to do with it.
Exactly.